Hello, and welcome to this semester's concluding conversation in the Driven by Purpose virtual series. I'm Karen King, Professor Emeritus of Advertising in the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia. The Department of Advertising and Public Relations is honored to present today's program on philanthropy and social good. We're especially honored to be part of the university's signature lecture series today. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to our wonderful guests, Maxine Clark and Jeff Jowdy. Maxine is CEO of the Clark Fox Foundation and founder of Build-A-Bear workshops. Maxine's teddy bears have brought joy to generations. I hope that some of you have them. She's been a master at uniting retail and entertainment before we even coined the term experiential marketing. Her bio is impressive. She's a marketing and enterprise pioneer who is using her business insights, entrepreneurial spirit, and commitment to good to develop creative solutions to help solve social challenges. You're going to hear more about that today. Maxine is a kind of venture philanthropist, you might say. She uses her business savvy to improve K-12 education and to invest in and mentor women and minority entrepreneurs. Her latest project, Delmer Divine, is a project to transform a St. Louis neighborhood into a vibrant, creative space for entrepreneurs and also to have affordable housing. We're going to hear more about that later, too. She's always giving back and giving forward. Maxine credits her mentors, her teachers, like our friend, the former Professor Ron Lane, who is one of her mentors. She credits them with her success, and they are honored and very proud of her. The first time I heard of Maxine was back in 1992 when I rounded the corner at Grady and Professor Lane was posting an article up on his bulletin board. Maxine had just become president of Payless Shoes. And her trajectory has only been steady and sharp ever since then. Maxine serves on many national boards. She's the vice chair of the PBS board. She also holds honorary degrees from St. Louis University and also from the University of Missouri at St. Louis. She's an advertising alumna of our own Grady College. She's a Dean's Medalist. She's also an inaugural member of the Grady Fellowship. She's the author of a book, The Bare Necessities of Business, Building a Company with Heart. In conversation with Maxine today is another one of our alums, Jeff Jowdy. Jeff is the founder and president of Lighthouse Counsel, a Franklin, Tennessee-based business that advises nonprofits on their mission, on leadership expertise, as well as fundraising. Jeff is a member of and past chair of the Grady Board of Trust, and he's also a member of the Grady Fellowship. I'd also like to recognize today by especially thanking people who are responsible here, the Hearst Foundation Visiting Professor Fund, Lighthouse Counsel, and Friends of Ad PR for their supporting this series. I'd like to recognize the program's sponsor, which is Talking Dog, our student-led, very active advertising and public relations agency. They foster growth for both clients and their members through the next generation perspectives. Talking Dogs is a full-service agency that partners with a wide range of clients and with expertise in everything from marketing research, strategy development to creative executions. Representing the students and posing questions today from them will be Talking Dog co-director Thomas McMullen. So let's get started.
Karen, thank you so much. And those pictures are wonderful. And Maxine, I've got fond memories of your inaugural class of the Grady Fellowship and hearing you speak. And I have your book. I should have it as a prop here, but on the bookcase behind me, autographed copy from the Bulldog 100. So we are just so proud of you and appreciate all that you do for Grady College and its students, and just appreciate your time and insight today. So thank you. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
Maxine, you have always been driven by purpose. Would you tell us why social purpose has been a part of all of your endeavors, from founding Build-A-Bear to working on boards such as KIPP Schools and Teach for America, Washington University, and now we're excited about your newest brainchild, Delmer Divine. What sets you on this path for purpose?
I think it has a lot to do with the way I was raised. My parents were first-generation Americans. They did not have the privilege of going to college, but they worked hard so that I could have that kind of future. And my mother was a social worker of sorts. She was Eleanor Roosevelt's private traveling secretary during World War II. And so she preached a lot to me about doing good. When she came to Miami, where I was raised, she, with the help of Eleanor Roosevelt and several other people that were close to her, they started a school for children with Down syndrome. So my mother was always showing us that there were people that needed our help, and that if we were lucky enough to have a good education and a good home life, we could share that with others. And so that stood with me. And I think all the way through college, I mean, there wasn't anything that I experienced in my life that didn't show me that 1 + 1 could equal 100, meaning that if you work with somebody else side by side, you can make somebody else's life better. And that is what, really, when you start a company and you employ people, that's what you're trying to do also, is help everybody have a better life. And so, it sort of goes together with being an entrepreneur. I never really think about it as a separate part. I think about it as just who I am.
That's fantastic. And I know your mother would be very proud, and you certainly are carrying on that legacy. Karen mentioned, and I've got my copy, as I've said, behind me, the bare necessities of business. And you built Build-A-Bear with a literal heart, a purpose for, as you just mentioned, beyond profit. From the start. Do you feel this was part of its brand innovation and its appeal?
Yes, I do. I think, honestly, I go all the way back. I know this sounds like I'm being patronizing, but my quality of education in the School of Journalism, the Henry Grady School of Journalism, in advertising in particular, taught me a lot about branding and how you make your brand unique. We worked on a lot of experiential projects even in those days, which was quite a long time ago. So Grady was really innovative, and those things always stayed with me. How could we make the brand we were working with, whether it was Coca-Cola on a project or it was a local restaurant? And those stood with me. And when I started Build-A-Bear, actually, the heart wasn't my idea. One day I took the bear over to a friend's house for a 4th of July barbecue just before we opened up, and I brought the bears in a bag, and I was showing them to my friend who is an artist, Sarah Russell, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And she looked at the bears and she said, "Maxine, these bears are so wonderful. They need to have a heart." And she literally meant a heart. So she drew one for me. And I immediately went home and called our factory and had these hearts made up. I had no idea how popular that would be. And people wanted, if they were a whole family together of 10 people, they wanted to put 10 hearts in that bear. So we underestimated how popular that would be. We did trademark it. I learned that also in the School of Marketing. But the idea for the heart was something that was beyond what I could have expected, because it meant so much to people. It's actually the moment that the parents remember the most. They almost always cry when their child is putting the heart in the bear, or if there's some tragedy or sadness in the family and they're making a bear to make that better, there's always a lot of emotion that goes along with that heart ceremony. But I wanted to say that came from the idea of one of our part-time employees, that the way we do it, not the heart came from Sarah, and the way we have the ceremony of the heart came from one of our employees who was a teacher, and he was working part-time for us. And I walked in the store just very soon after we opened and hired him, and he was doing all kinds of gyrations to make that heart work and be passionate and be energetic. And that spread across our company. That became the way that our stores created the heart ceremony. It wasn't just put a heart in, it became a real ceremony. And I think that's also part of our brand that people remember.
Great chapter in your book on becoming a great boss, and what makes a great boss, and what can leaders and future bosses learn from that?
Yeah, I always think, even though I didn't always agree with my bosses, I think I had great bosses because they taught me a lot. They set a good example also. And you learn by watching and doing. Osmosis is a good thing in many of those kinds of cases. And my bosses in the retail business, when I started in the retail business, right, pretty much right after Grady in Washington, D.C., was on the floor all the time, and my bosses were on the floor. I was there early in the morning stocking the shelves, and my bosses would come through and say, no, this, why don't you do it this way? It might be easier and faster. Or they would stop in my office and talk to me and ask me how my business was. And so, to me, that was a great example. And I didn't know any other way either. So when I started my own company, or when I progressed up the ladder at the May Company, I was following their lead because it was still an important part of our culture. Culture is something that we talk about a lot at Build-A-Bear. We created a great culture, but great companies almost always, one of the things I found, whether it's Starbucks or Square or McDonald's or whatever the companies are, they have created their own culture that you either fit into or you don't. But today's world, like students like Thomas can go out and study the companies they're going to go to work for on the internet. They can find people that work there and talk to them via Zoom. We couldn't do that in those days. You had to kind of trust your gut instinct. And I made a great decision. I worked for a great company and they taught me great things.
Maxine, thank you. We're anxious to hear about the vision for Del Mar Divine. And you said in a St. Louis magazine article that it started because you were making a right turn instead of a left turn. So how did it get its name? How did you use your leadership to reach out and get others involved to get it started?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking about the Del Mar Divine. Actually, that making a right turn instead of a left is my journalism upbringing. I'm nosy. I have a nose for news. So I always want to learn something else. And I go different places. I want to study them. So I turned that right and I saw them putting the sign in for sale. And it was right near our KIPP school that was just opening up. And I'm thinking, we just opened up a school. It's going to have 600 children in it. Now they're going to tear down this building. Somebody's going to take this wonderful old hospital. I did not know when I drove by how big it really was, but it's about 500,000 square feet, about half of a mall. And so I called a friend of mine who was running a big project similar in St. Louis. And I said, why don't you take this on? And he said, oh, we're so busy. Why don't you do it? And I thought, well, yeah, why don't I do it? I really care about this. And I had to learn a lot. Now, again, my research background, my journalism background really helped me because I went right away to the library to find out about the hospital that was here. What was its history? What kind of programs did it have? Was it a state-of-the-art hospital? All these things I wanted to know. And I think that part that's about my curiosity is my secret superpower. Makes me really get into a project much faster because I kind of immerse myself in the study of it. As if I was writing a story about it. And I did write a story about it, actually. That's how I had to convince others to participate with me. But what I saw was a possibility to bring disparate groups of nonprofits that exist in St. Louis together in this hospital that once was opened over 100 years ago that cared for people, but to care for people in a 21st century way. Also to create housing for teachers, nurses, social workers, those young, diverse professionals that don't make that much money. They go into these professions out of the love of that work. And we want to be able to provide them a great place to live. This location is really at Hollywood and Vine. It's kind of sad that this neighborhood didn't stay prosperous, but it's right between the Washington University undergraduate campus and the medical school campus, and two great entertainment areas. One is the Del Mar Loop, and the other is the Central West End, which has lots of restaurants and fun entertainment things. But this part of Del Mar is the divide of St. Louis, the north and south, black and white, rich and poor. And so it became famous by the BBC actually made it infamous when they did a story after Michael Brown was killed in 2014 about this area. And it was redlined. It was, once a beautiful neighborhood that became not available to people that could now afford to live there. And so they kept people from moving in that could have kept the neighborhood prosperous, including immigrants and our African-American population. And so it went into decline when all of the shops moved to the malls and there were no jobs in the local area. Similar, I know this happens in every major city in America. Some have jumped on the opportunity differently than St. Louis. And so I saw this history, this opportunity for commerce, for commerce again, for a really great living environment. It's very close to our park, our version of Central Park here in St. Louis, Forest Park, which has museums and art galleries and all kinds of things in it. Why wouldn't anybody want to live here and work here? So we're very excited about this project. It's been complicated because it's a large project. It's about $100 million project. I've raised $100 million before, but for a business, it's a lot different than for a nonprofit. And so it's taken us a little bit longer than I had anticipated. But in that process, I've become, I've got to know the neighbors. I've got to understand the neighborhood. I've got to study the history, and I get to we get to respond to the times as they're changing right in front of us. And so I'm really thankful, actually, that it slowed me down a little bit, which is not easy to do. I'm a kind of go for it, and I want to get it done. But this one forced me to take the time to understand better, and I'm very appreciative of that in retrospect.
What a great history and vision. Thank you for sharing, and we look forward to hearing of your continued progress and what a big difference you're making. In the nonprofit sector, we hear a lot about how nonprofits compete with each other, and Del Mar Divine really takes a different approach, with collaboration being the lead. What can other communities learn from that approach?
Well, I think that communities are starting to learn this. There actually are hundreds of these across the country now, not as large as ours. Most of them are around 24,000 square feet. They're an office space that nonprofits can rent or use as a co-working space at a relatively reasonable price. But ours goes beyond that. We've developed the Center for Human Services Leadership, which is to help nonprofits scale up and build capacity in their leaders, so that we have good and smooth transitions in the future. That we actually think about our community in total, like maybe the person who's leading one organization today might be really capable and able to run a bigger organization in the future, and not think of each of these as so competitive, but part of the ecosystem of St. Louis's safety net and how we can help people prosper in the future. So we're really working on that. We're working with Washington University. We'll have practicum students from the School of Social Work from all over St. Louis's schools of social work. We want to bring the universities in our area together, as well as the nonprofits, in order to build capacity in ways that maybe we haven't really maximized, leverage the talent that we do have in these organizations and at our universities for real practical work. I'm sort of a critic of some of the academic work that goes on that's totally research oriented, doesn't have any basis in reality, and nobody ever puts it to the real test. We're going to put it to the real test, and the Brown School of Social Work at Washington University is very much a partner with us.
Thank you, Maxine. And before we turn to Thomas and questions from the students, there's a great post on the Del Mar Divine website that talks about crises and disruptions like the pandemic, and how just ways to be more attuned to thinking of others. And as we go into this season of thanks and giving that certainly is going to be unlike no other, how would you challenge us to think about empathy, gratitude, and serving the needs of others wherever we are?
Well, one thing, it's a huge personal opportunity. I have made so many friends, so many new acquaintances. I've actually been able to work closely with some of my neighbors to start their own businesses, to give them the encouragement that they need. It's not always about money, by the way. I think a lot of times we think that if we give money, we make a difference, but actually it's our time and our talents that make the difference in people, the real genuine relationships that we build. And of course, as a marketing and advertising major in college, we learned about that. Maybe sometimes we thought about it was on paper, but today's world, with social media and connectivity being more important than ever, it's even more important that we make those personal connections. And I think we're going to appreciate them much differently when we come out of this COVID world. It won't be just on Zoom, although Zoom is a great way for us to share with people we might not otherwise be able to meet with, because we wouldn't travel there. So we've been able to bring a lot more people, by the way, to the table of our conversations in St. Louis, to invite more people and for more people to participate. So we've learned that in some very difficult situations, you can also make lemonade out of lemons, and this has been one of them. We've been able to bring a lot of groups together to already start solving problems that we have in St. Louis and appreciate them in a different way. But I just don't want to underestimate the relationships. I tell this to college students all the time. that those connections, that networking that you do, don't take it for granted. It is really an important part of your future, and people don't take advantage of it. I speak at many colleges and universities and local businesses. I give my card and my email address to everyone. You'd be surprised how few people call me and take me up on it. And you know it's sincere. You know that I would answer every student. And so I think that that's a missed opportunity, because everyone that I do talk to, I make a connection with, and I do everything I can to help them move forward in their life. So I think that, and we're honored when they call us, like that's the other side of it. You want to be helpful. And especially when you have this connection, the University of Georgia, whenever I meet anyone, I think that we had a wonderful employee that worked for us, Lauren Hoffman, who recently, by the way, got married. She was a University of Georgia graduate, not when I was there, but when we connected on that, it was just a wonderful instant. It was instant, actually. And here's Lauren. She's quite tall and I'm quite petite, but we had an immediate bond, and it was the University of Georgia. And I'm so appreciative that she contacted me. That she called me and knew that she knew that about me. And so I would say to Thomas and your other students that are listening to this, that don't take that for granted. Your relationship to your university is the first thing you should join, your alumni association, and stay connected to the Grady School and stay connected to the University of Georgia. It's a gigantic world, and it's all over the world, and especially all over the United States, not just in Georgia. It's everywhere now. Students from the University of Georgia have graduated and are running companies and working in successful businesses all over the United States.
Maxine, you are phenomenal as always. You have inspired me for many years, and I look forward. We hope to have you in Athens, I know, soon, and Dean Davis and Brian and Karen. And the other thing that inspires me when I'm on campus are incredible Grady students. And so we'll now pass it off to one of those leaders, Thomas.
Hi, Maxine. It's great to hear all of that from you. I was fiercely taking notes as you gave all of those insights into your career. So I'll start with questions that I have for you on behalf of the student body here at Grady. I'll start with, you mentioned the fact that you were the first in your immigrant family to graduate from college. So I'm really curious how that might have shaped the person that you are today. And I would like to ask you to speak to the perseverance it takes to embark on such a journey.
I think luckily for me, the time that I grew up in, many first generation families were sending their children to college. College was much more affordable than it is today. And they were, I went to public education my entire life from K through college, and I got a great education. And I think that some of that changed a little bit, when they started taking private universities and the government started putting more money into private universities. Universities like the University of Georgia were able to thrive also as a research university, and with so many outstanding schools like the Grady College of Journalism. But I really feel like it was just sort of expected that I would go to college, it was just the times. And I kind of went with I never thought about not going, I can tell you that for sure, but it did inspire me. And I knew that it was important for me to be successful. My parents we had a very good life. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we were a good middle-class family. And I just thought that middle-class life would go on forever, but you have to really work at it. It's not as easy as it looks. And what takes to be middle-class today is much larger than what it took to be middle class when I went to college.
Thank you for that. I know a lot of people can definitely relate to your story, so thank you. Next, I wanted to mention the fact that you graduated from the University of Georgia with a bachelor's degree in advertising. That's, of course, a story that resonates with me personally as I'm pursuing that same degree, and also many of the students watching. So I wanted to ask you what your biggest piece of advice is for leveraging that undergraduate degree throughout such a dynamic career.
It is the best education you can get. When you're, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer and that, then those are routes that you can go to. But actually, I was going to be a lawyer and going to the journalism school really prepared me for that as well, because you learn to be a writer, you learn to think succinctly, you learn to ask a lot of questions, which lawyers do. But I would say that I advise so many young people on what a great opportunity being in the communications world is. And it's even better today than it was when I was in college, with all the opportunities for social media communication, all of the need for content developers, people that are writing and developing content that's actually interesting to us. I'm on the board of PBS, the National Board of PBS. I'm the vice chair, and we all know what great work PBS does. I think that I don't know how we would live without PBS and all of the local stations that exist around the country. And I'm honored to be using my background to be on this amazing board of directors for all the good work that they do. And I'm also on the local 9 network here in St. Louis, our local board, which is much more action oriented because I'm here on the ground with our team. But I would just say that it is one of the best degrees you can have, regardless of where you think you're going to go, because it takes into account psychology, it takes in sociology, anthropology, all of these things that you need to know about human behavior that are actually really interesting also. They're not just like things you have to know. They're really interesting to know. And they can take you down a path that really finds an interest that you're deep about. I also have a strong interest in politics. I never really thought about running for office, but I always cared about politics. And journalism also is such an important part of what we know about our politics today or don't know. And I would encourage you, because I want it to be real news, truthful news, and all of the stories and communications that people write about the companies they work for are important, that they really resonate the truth of that company to the people, whether it's the United States government you're working for, or for an individual private company or a nonprofit. Storytelling has come its own way now, and it's a very, very important part of communications with your customers, your clients, your citizens.
That's incredible. Thank you. I know just reading your bio and hearing the conversation you were having with Jeff about how dynamic your career has been and how many different changes you've made, it's really inspiring for me to see the flexibility that the degree has given you and all the different skills you've picked up along the way. My next question is, what are ways that I, as a college student, can begin promoting social good and philanthropy in my own communities?
Well, there's lots of ways that students in college today, I don't think we were as good at it as you guys are. Many, many organizations, especially the professional organizations that students belong to, engage in the community. And the more you can share with children, especially children in K to 12, excite them about what you're studying, excite them about the opportunity to go to college. And college isn't for everyone, but let it be the young person's decision, not someone else's decision. And if they know that what kinds of jobs and what kind of work and how much you love your education, they're going to want that too. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that we have, that our college students in every community across the country have, is to relate their positive experiences to younger children, to help give them the confidence that they need to move forward, to change their life, to be part of the change in their community. And journalism is one of those ways for sure, because you learn to communicate and you learn to express yourself in ways that, of course, a lot of us go to it naturally. We're talkers and we're writers and all that, but it gets refined. It gets refined, and we find our pathway. I originally thought I wanted to be in broadcast journalism. I thought about that, but I ended up in marketing and advertising, which has served me in all of this, the retail work, the commerce, and the nonprofit work that I do incredibly well. It's also made me adaptable. I think that I would bet you that if you surveyed people that were in a journalism career, starting back when I did in the 70s to now, they've been much more flexible about social media and adapting to all the changes than people who went to another profession. We just have a hunger for it, for being able to communicate and connect with people. And I think that's a skill that is priceless.
That's incredible. I know I can speak to my personal experience in mentorship and things like that. At Talking Dog Agency, Grady's student advertising and PR agency, we actually have the privilege to work with the high schools in Athens, Clarke County. So we have interns who are high school juniors and seniors who actually get to come in and shadow the positions throughout our agency, attend all of our meetings. And we really take that opportunity as an awesome moment to really mentor them and hopefully show them, like you were just mentioning, all the things that they could do with with a degree from Grady.
You're already doing it. That's fantastic. I love that idea of that agency, by the way. I think that is really incredible. And I applaud University of Georgia for making such an experiential opportunity for the students. It's real. You're doing the work. It's great.
Yes, I really like Talking Dog. It's awesome. So you mentioned just a little bit ago about social media. So I'm really curious how social media has played throughout all of your efforts to promote social good and philanthropy. And I'd actually like to open up the floor to Jeff as well on this question after you, because I'm sure social media has played a big impact for the both of you.
Yeah, social media, when I started Build-A-Bear in 1997, there really wasn't any such thing. So we had to use the traditional public relations and media, which served me well because I'm good at that. And we got a great start. I mean, it was those kinds of stories. In fact, in 2004, we were on Oprah, and that was an amazing experience for our business. For me personally, interacting with that brand, Oprah is what she says she is. She's fantastic. And other people that I met that then wanted to be associated with our brand. But social media now allows you to be telegraph your message, the good things you're doing, to a much broader audience. Of course, it's always the people that are your friends or that sign up to follow you, but then those followers have followers, and so you're really sharing. And with Build-A-Bear particularly, there's a love. There's this we created a love mark. And not only literally with our heart and our trademark, but something that people remember and love and grew up with. And now we have another generation bringing their children to the first generation of Build-A-Bear customers are bringing their children to Build-A-Bear, which is a tremendous thing for me. People write me stories even today and tell me things. But I think that the message is really important, is that we can just reach more people. Now that I'm retired from Build-A-Bear and I'm doing these other community works, I can be my political self also. I can share things that really drive me crazy. I can push for things that I really care about, whether it's vote no on Amendment 3 in Missouri or whatever it is. I can have a voice that I didn't used to be able to have. And because I have a good amount of followers, people will contact me and ask me why I think this way. And we would never have been able to do that. If somebody had to write me a letter, type a letter and then mail it to me, and then I had to write them back, we would never get anywhere. So there's bad things associated with it for sure. But I think there's also a lot of good. And those of us that are out for the good need to be pushing forward and making sure that we're protecting it for the good that it can do, not just the bad and the misleading. That's always possible. And that was always possible in printed journalism as well. It was a much more effort to read it. Now it just shows up on your frame. So I think that's something that we really need to think about as journalists and as advertising and marketers, is how we're going to make sure this is used for good, that we're going to reward and call out people that are doing good with it, which is a lot of people in the nonprofit world, by the way. Lots of research, like the Pew Trust, they put out a lot of information. And I think that universities do also. I don't follow all of them, but I think universities, we've seen it in COVID, how Johns Hopkins University used their platform to inform us about what's going on with COVID. I didn't have any connection to Johns Hopkins University before, but now I do. And I think that every university has that place where they can play a special role. And probably in University of Georgia, there's many of them. And I'm just not familiar with all that are really impacting us today. But I think that's something, as you go out into the working world, Thomas, and you take on a position and think broadly about where you could work. Because you might think of advertising and marketing as consumer products, but it really is more than that. It's whole citizenries, it's whole organizations. There's so many good things that you as a talented marketer can do, not just in the commerce world, although a lot of people think you can make a lot of money there. That's probably true, but you can also have a good living and a good career doing for work, that same work for nonprofits. Also, what's a new trend in companies is ESG, looking at the environment and the social responsibility of a company. And they're hiring people like yourself in these departments to tell these stories, to engage with diversity and inclusion, as well as what are we doing to change the planet? What can we do to make the world a better place? It's a huge opportunity for journalists, especially well-educated from the University of, I feel so strongly about this, the practical education, like you're getting working at Talking Dog and you're getting with the projects that you work on. You've already got a great resume. I mean, think about that, how much you can add value to so many different organizations. So don't close your mind to oh, I've got to go to commerce, or I've got to go to a Coca-Cola, I've got to go to this. I want to go to something that I can make a difference in. And there's hundreds of those kinds of thousands of those opportunities around the country for you and for your fellow students.
That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, did you have anything to add on social media?
I enjoy following Maxine and learning from her about every day on Twitter and different social media. It's a platform that none of us envisioned when we were in school, and it's a direct communication and to what can be a large body of people. Sometimes it's a conversation with a few people. It's a powerful tool, and some frankly use it for good, and some, I hate to say evil, but not so good. So I think and Maxine's covered this, but part of our training, and I think our fiber and commitment as communicators, she mentioned research. Maxine mentioned asking questions, telling a story. So I think that there's a responsibility for all of us that have been touched by the Grady College, especially many communicators, to uphold those standards no matter what arena we're in today. And that we all have a platform, as Maxine shared, on social media, so we can be a powerful tool for good. And I know Maxine challenges us all every day in how she communicates to do that. And I hope we all will.
That's awesome. Definitely one thing that I am hopeful for every day, like you mentioned, using social media for good, is the fact that, so many in my generation have grown up with social media. So hopefully we can use that comfortability, that adaptability to, keep doing as much social good as we can on social media.
And one thing that's really good to look at is that when I graduated from University of Georgia, that we had newspapers and broadcast and radio, but now there's so many tools, and it should inspire you that the next thing isn't invented yet. What else is there out there? So journalism students, will be the ones to invent the next platform. And I love that there's so many nonprofit newspapers now, online places to get information, some great writers, some great minority writers. So I'm learning a whole nother thing about the world that I didn't necessarily know. So you can really dig in. And so I think that, that's also a big opportunity. What's next? I mean, and what can we do to improve it? Don't think that because it's already invented, that it can't be reinvented, because I didn't invent teddy bears, and Howard Schultz didn't invent coffee, and Ray Kroc didn't invent hamburgers. We all invented how to do it better. And we know that social media could still be better.
That's awesome. So Maxine, you've been named one of the 25 most influential people in retail. You've been inducted into the Junior Achievement Hall of Fame, and you've been named Woman of the Year by the Greater Missouri Leadership Foundation, just to name a few. So what would you say is your biggest accomplishment that most people aren't aware of? Maybe something that hasn't made it onto your Wikipedia page just yet, but something that still means a lot.
This is something that'll never be on there. But when I'm lucky enough to be out in the world, going someplace in an airport or even in my neighborhood, people will say, "Are you the bear lady?" Or "I know you. You started Build-A-Bear," and they'll come up to me, and children will just hug me because they had such a great time at Build-A-Bear. And that to me, Mama Bear is kind of the best of all. I didn't know when I started Build-A-Bear what it was going to be. I had a good idea that we could be everything we wanted to be, but I didn't stop it with my own perception of the company. I let children and our employees and associates expand the vision. So what it is today is not all that I had on that business plan. It's way more than that, because I let other people contribute. And that when I go places and people, children especially, recognize me, I am so excited about it, because that's a lot. I mean, they've never met me, but they might have seen my picture on the book, or they heard about me in a store. I have a lot of stories that I could tell, how people have shared my story. Our associates have shared who I am with the world, and how accurate it is, and how good it makes me feel that they knew that about me. And I probably didn't tell them the story either, but they were researchers. They looked it up. I am so lucky. That is the greatest gift of all, is when a child gives you a hug because you made something special for them and you didn't even know it. There's no way to know all of that.
I love that. That's awesome. I know going back sort of to the social media conversation, I know that as I was growing up with Build-A-Bear, didn't necessarily have like a phone in my hand. I was going through the store making all my different brands, but maybe now how social media can tie into that experience and share that experience on such a broader scale. I think that's such a cool opportunity.
You know, one of the things I get to do when I invest in women and minority entrepreneurs, and I get exposed to a lot of entrepreneurial ideas, and actually there are tons of them coming out now that actually are, you know, you could be in a store through AI or through some other technology and communicating the love and the fun of Build-A-Bear virtually. If you had told me that could be done, I probably would have said, oh, sure, right, someday. You know, it's all about the touchy-feely. But now there's people working on this to help us recreate the touchy-feely in a virtual way. I still hope that we'll be back to not the old normal, but a new normal where people will feel comfortable coming to a store and children will have that memory again. But maybe we can have that memory for more people now because we can reach more people through the technology. And I'm looking forward to that being a reality. So there's tons of ways of this is going to change our, we're thinking of it as social media, but new technologies that communicate and connect with people in a way that we couldn't have imagined a year ago, let alone, you know, back when I was in school. You have a lot to look forward to, Thomas. There's an exciting world out there.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my last question is, what's next for you, Maxine, the Chief Executive Bear yourself? Are there any exciting new projects beyond Del Mar Divine?
Well, I have some ideas after this, but this is such an all-encompassing project. Phase 1 will open next year, and phase 2 will probably open up in 2023. So there's a couple more years to go. But in this neighborhood, I've discovered a lot of beautiful, St. Louis has tremendous, beautiful churches, and a lot of them are almost empty. And I'm really worried about them. And so I've been thinking about how could we repurpose some of these beautiful churches into community engagement, to wedding venues, to some other purpose so they don't go away, because they have some of the most beautiful history in our community here in St. Louis, but that's probably true in every city. But we have quite a few in St. Louis. It was a very large city at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, before the World's Fair was one of the largest cities in the country. And it was growing very fast. And so they built up these neighborhoods and just beautiful buildings. So I'm thinking about how to do that. I'm not sure that's where I'm going to go, but it's one of the things I see as an opportunity. Again, a marketing opportunity, you know, not just to redo the building, which will take some money, but what are you going to use it for? And how are you going to communicate its story to the new people that would be using it in a 21st century way? So that's kind of a fun thing to think about. And then, of course, there's always more to do in education, more to share. And there's also so many new entrepreneurs. I spend most of my time now with minority entrepreneurs, and they are brilliant, and they're creating products and services that their constituents want to use, and they're growing by leaps and bounds. And it is so much fun to work with them and to see what they're creating and not have to do the day-to-day work. I love that part. That's the really good part of it. So I can be sort of like a grandparent, you know, sending the grandkids home, but I get to inspire and work with and run through the ideas and, you know, use my experience to help them, but also let them do their thing. And they're very, very smart. Some great products are out there in the marketplace now, and many, many more coming. So something to look forward to.
That's incredible. I'm really excited to follow Del Mar Divine and on that journey, and wish you all the best with it. Absolutely.
Thank you, Thomas. And the same to you.
Thank you.
You can get my email address and stay in touch with me and let me know where you, as I'm sure you're not going to land, you'll get a great job, but you'll be growing in that job for the future. So I'd love to know how you do in your future. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely, will do. So thank you, Maxine and Jeff. It was incredible to meet and hear from you both. At this time, I will be passing things back to Dr. King for final thoughts.
Wow, thank you so much, Maxine and Jeff. We're very proud of you, and as you can tell, and what an inspiring discussion. And thank you, Thomas and students, for the great questions. You really got at the heart of some of the wonderful things that Maxine is doing. We hope that you will join us again for the Driven by Purpose series. When it continues in the spring, we'll have additional programming. And thank you again so much to everybody.